Hello YouTube, my name is Plazukas, and as you can see on the screen, I have a weapon tier list up. And you might be like, oh, Plazukas, you're going to do another tier list. You've already done another tier list. You've already been criticized from your last two tier lists. How are you going to improve this tier list? How are you going to justify it only 2 weeks after you did your last? Well, I've received a lot of feedback. And I've also done more testing in this game. You know, to my own credit and to the game's credit, it takes a while to level these up, to get perks, to test them out. I say that while also admitting that I haven't been able to test everything out in this game to the extent that I would like. And so maybe there'll be another tier list in another month or 2 months, or maybe in another 2 weeks, depending on how the meta shifts with the second half of Season 1.2. I'm not going to be locked into these. If I think there's something to say, I'm going to say it. So, without further ado, let's get into the most comprehensive tier list you're going to find, and we're going to start by going through why I'm justifying some of these decisions based on their synergy, based on what is being used in the meta, and other things that I've tested and found out through my time playing Destiny Rising. This is going to be very comprehensive. It's going to be very long. So please, bear with me. Concerto. Concerto's traits are this. Final blows grant Cadenza, increasing this weapon's damage by 20%. Stacks 4 times. Dying clears all stacks, which means if you die, they all go away. However, if you do land final blows while Cadenza is active, it fully reloads this weapon. Okay? The second trait. When Cadenza is active, okay, when it's active, transfer, swap into your weapon, automatically fills its magazine and transfers up to 2 Cadenza stacks to it. So if you have the 4 or the 3 or the 2, it'll transfer up to 2 of those stacks to your actual power weapon, giving you 20% extra weapon damage for your power weapon, which would be, in this case, the Eternal Retribution. Now, it could be also the IST2 Neontics, right? I've obviously ranked the Eternal Retribution in my last tier list as S tier. I've ranked the Concerto at a high A tier in my last rankings. And then, conversely, I ranked Octant Riot Disperser and the Chaperone in B. Okay? This was because of the synergy between Concerto and something like the Eternal Retribution. The Eternal Retribution having perks such as this weapon deals 20% 7 damage when it's equipped to a character of the same element, so Void being Void with Gwen, and then hitting the same target 2 times in a row grants the rest of the magazine a 75% damage bonus until the weapon is reloaded, which means you can expend 8 bullets into the weapon and get that perk from the 75% extra damage until it's reloaded. Again, you can have mods that help you with some of this. Hitting the same target twice in a row grants the rest of the magazine 20%, 25% rate of fire. This will help improve the overall rate of fire, which is what people will argue is better for the Octant Riot Disperser because of how quick it unloads its 8 magazine payload into an enemy, and then ultimately increases its overall multiplier. So in this case, hold down the reload button to enable volume mode. Once charged, the weapon will fire all the remaining rounds in the magazine for a high burst of damage. Damage from this weapon's volley significantly increases based on a number of pellet shots. So if you have total 8 in your magazine, okay, at that time, it will obviously increase indicatively of the 8, okay, which is different than this, obviously, and the multipliers are different. This is a base statted weapon. I don't have it leveled up. If it were 80, then it would obviously have a higher DPS and everything else. And I'm not even going to discount people who are suggesting that the Disperser will do more damage than something like the Eternal Retribution. However, if you were to take all of the combinations of what's currently in the Mythic slot for Kushinagra, or for the Del 6 Kakaratsi, which is what you would have to run if you used the Octant Riot Disperser or the Chaperone, this is what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a perk system like this. You're dealing with Surrounded, which is this weapon deals 35% damage when 3 or more targets are in close proximity. This weapon deals 28% when all fire team members are alive. Emptying your powers magazine grants your primary weapon plus 60 damage for 8 seconds. Your primary weapon gains constant plus 60% damage if there are no heavy ammo reserves. Okay? And then you have the second one, Final Blows grant plus 7 damage, stacks 5 times with all stacks being cleared up upon death. Final blows made with this weapon granted 2.5% damage bonus, stacks 15%. The effect lasts until the current stage is cleared. And then lastly, final blows with this weapon or another weapon will grant this weapon plus 15% damage for 8 seconds. Now, the one criticism that you could have from Concerto is having to proc the final blows before you actually switch over and use the stacks for the Eternal Retribution. If that's the only limiter for this weapon, specifically to proc those and to get the Concerto stacks, which is final blows, any final blows, by the way, 1 final blow, 2 final blow, grants Contenza increasing this weapon's damage, and you get up to 4 stacks, right? Stacks 4 times. All right. If that is the limited factor in this, then you could basically say that any of these weapons that have final blows is also a limiter or an equalizer in that case, right? With the Del 6, right? This weapon gradually gains up to 30% rate of fire and damage for the lower half of the magazine. So half of this magazine, which has a magazine cap of 24 compared to 34 compared to 32. Okay, just so you know, this has a lower magazine. So the half of this magazine is already going to be less than the other two. So even if that is a multiplier, how much actually is it multiplying? Landing final blows when below 50% health. That's a large condition. Grants plus 30% damage bonus for 8 seconds and triggers health regeneration. Again, you have to land final blows. You have to land final blows. So there's an equalizer there as far as the conditions. This is the recommended perk, apparently. This weapon deals increased damage based on how low the target's health is, up to 36%. Again, another condition that you have to meet in order to proc this Annihilation perk. Okay, which is fine. There's no issues with that. It's a great finisher in many regards, right? And then you can obviously boost it up with your perks. But we're not going to deal with perks because we're not going to deal with the perk upgrades. We're just going to deal with the base perks, okay? Black Body. Final blows. Again, another final blow. 1 grants plus 70 stacks 5 times with all stacks being cleared upon death. Again, another cleared upon death consideration. Reincarnation. Final blows with this weapon grant it 15% damage bonus for 6 seconds, stacked 6 times. Final blows grant the next magazine plus 60% damage after reloading. If no final blows were made with this previous weapon, then reloading will grant up to based on the number of its landed. Okay, so all of this basically procs this damage multiplier or the conditions of this, but it's all pretty much final blows specifically. It has this DPS, and again, if you were to max it out, it would get even higher. But in my testing, there are not many mythics that beat out raw DPS to an exotic, and there's not many legendaries that do the same for mythics, if any. I don't think there is any. So if we're just dealing with final blows, okay, fine. Maybe this weapon, in some capacity, if you proc it 100% of the time in every situation, is a better weapon in some cases. But does it actually transfer that over to the Octant Riot Dispenser? Well, or to the Eternal Retribution like the Concerto does. Well, no, you don't have that actual transfer. But what you would say is that, well, because you have Octant Riot Disperser, you don't need that extra damage because of the multiplier you get from the 8 magazine on load and how quick it does it specifically. Okay, that might be a clear consideration as to why something like that combination would be better. So let's go back here and just check this one more time, okay? So we got final blows grant, okay, stacks with all, okay, so again, this is for this weapon specifically. Final blows made with this weapon granted 2.5% damage bonus, stacks 15 times, its effect lasts until the current stage is clear. Again, another final blows. Final blows with this weapon or another weapon will grant this weapon plus 15% damage for 8 seconds. Again, all for this specific weapon. There's no transfer to another weapon, so if this weapon is what you're looking for to do all your damage or your or power, then sure. But I would say that any of these stacks or any of these multipliers is going to be equal to what you would get for stacks for this Concerto proc-in for the Contenza. The 20% increase is huge comparatively to anything you get off a Mythic DPS stat even at the highest modded stat or equivalent, right? If you look at the first perks here, surrounded, this weapon deals 35% when 3 or more targets are in the close proximity. This is the probably best perk that we've seen on any of the sidearms currently, okay? Because this is a lot easier to proc. However, if you have 3 or more targets in your vicinity, then most likely a couple of them are going to be red ones, which you could then get final blows on it anyway, which you could then proc this perks ability and this perks ability pretty easily. So that 35% is less impressive, because you can get 40% potentially with this Cadenza perk for killing 2 of those things that you have surrounded. Fraternity, this weapon deals 28% when all fire team members are alive. Yes, this one is 28% base damage. There's no additional proc that you can get out of that 28% though, unfortunately. Now you can pair it with this one to get an even higher percentage, but are you going to match, 40%, 80% like the Cadenza's proc? I doubt it. And like we've already said, the DPS standard for this is higher than most mythics. So therefore, comparatively, the Concerto is a much better damage dealer. Plus, it transfers some of that to Eternal Retribution. All right. And then lastly, the facilitated agreement, emptying your power weapons magazine grants your primary weapon, which doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, sure, you can go back and forth here. For 8 seconds, your primary weapon gains constant if there are no heavy ammo reserves, right? So this is a very hard condition to meet, and it's the one that's recommended for this specific weapon, which is going to just give this more damage. Now, if you're saying that you can switch between the Octet Riot Dispenser, you unload the Octet Riot Dispenser from the 8 mags that you have on here, and let's say there's nothing left, right? Then you're going to be able to proc this facilitated agreement, which is emptying your weapon powers, grants your primary weapon 60 for 8 seconds. Your primary weapon gains constant plus 60 if there are no heavy ammo reserves. So if you have nothing left in your Octet Riot Disperser, which essentially you wouldn't, then you're going to get extra proc on your pistols. But at that point, why would you need that if you're unloading your shotgun, all of it? And then if you have the perk upgrade, your primary weapon deals plus 25 when your power weapons reserves are exhausted. So you're going to get even more at 85%. Okay? That's 85%. You already get an 80% off the Concerto Cadenza perk. So in essence, you're having to do a lot of conditions for the Octet Riot Disperser specifically. So now here in lies the ultimate question. How much does this actually do comparatively to the Eternal Retribution when it's procced with Cadenza? Because obviously, it will do more damage without the Cadenza, clearly, because it's a mythic compared to an exotic. We've already talked about DPS stuff, right? But before we actually answer that question, let's look at the Chaperone, although this is really not in contention in my opinion. Fires a single slug precision round. Precision kills briefly increase the weapon's handling range and precision damage. Based on what this has and what Eternal Retribution can do, I don't even think the Chaperone is even in consideration currently with this particular loadout and how you would proc, any of the perks that we currently have. Even with the Kushinagura, you would want to potentially have the facilitated agreement to give this weapon, because there's no way to transfer on the mythics your power to your damage multiplier to your power weapon. So you'd want it to be on whatever sidearm you have. So in this case, the Kushinagura would be the best option, and the facilitated agreement would give you the most actual percentage for damage based on the conditions met, which would only be procced by the Octet Riot Disperser. So here's what is clear to me. If you're running Concerto, you're running Eternal Retribution, okay? Because then, arguably, are you going to run this IST Niantics, which has fusion rifle fires 2 more rounds per trigger pull, and shotguns fire. So this would be shotgun specifically for this perk. Fire 3 more pellets per trigger pull. Okay, so you can deal 3. What's the magazine size for this? Less magazine size than the other one. Okay, so this has a 6 magazine size compared to the Eternal Retribution that has an 8. That has to be taken into consideration. So you're only going to be able to do 2 shots of this for every reload. When all rounds in a single trigger pull hit the same target, the next shot shoot interval is shortened by 25% and this weapon grants 30% speed. Well, it has a lower magazine, so a lot of this ain't gonna matter. Okay, this is the recommended one. The 13 pellets of this shotgun are replaced with 5 heavy bullets, dealing 23% damage overall and gaining plus 20% range. Again, these percentages don't seem that impressive. And when you're dealing with a lower reserve or magazine, even with this proc, I don't even know what this would do. The heavy pellets specifically, to it says only 23% damage. I wonder if this gives a heavy a DPS compared to the 13 pellets. So it would be in addition to the 23%. So maybe there is something there. But again, you're only going to have to be you're only going to be able to get one of these. It's recommending this one. I still don't think this would be any better than the Eternal Retribution's proc of being able to hit in the same target 2 times in a row, grants the rest of the magazine a 25% damage bonus until the weapon is reloaded. I mean, come on. 75% straight up on Karmic Reward, okay? And Karmic Reward has been historically one of the best perks you can get in this game, period. When all rounds hit the same target in the consecutive trigger pulls, they will trigger an elemental explosion, dealing 8% of the base damage to the said target. That's one time. That's a one-time thing. When all rounds in a single trigger pull hit the same target, the next shot deals plus 20% damage, stacks 3 times. Yeah, I can stack that for 60. This is already doing it, and it's 75 damage until the weapon is reloaded. Okay, and that you have 6 more of these rather than the 3 or whatever you have left in your magazine at that rate. It would be what is it? 5. So wait, how many do you have to do? It says when all rounds in a single trigger pull hit the same target, the next shot deals. So you're dealing with that, like if you have this one, then you're doing 2 shots per round. So that would mean you only have 4 in your thing. If you're using this one, then you have less than that because you have to do at least 2 or 1. Does the 1 come out of here? So maybe with this perk and this perk specifically, you can get a little bit more damage. But what is it? 43%? Stacks 4 times, but you stacked 4 times over the course of many shots, where this is procced after 2 and you get 6 more in your round. So I think this still beats out, the Karmic Reward still beats out. Not to mention you get an extra 27% based on just being the same element, conjugation, without even having to have a modded thing to proc it. This has already been procced. You don't need an extra modifier to get any more value from that specifically. And then lastly, the ensured yields. Final blows grant the next magazine plus 60% damage at 3 reload. And if no final blows were made with the previous magazine, then reloaded with a grant up to 30% damage based on the number of hits landed. You have to reload in order to proc this. It's still 35%, and this would be specifically for boss damage for ensured yields. I think it's pretty safe to say that Eternal Retribution overall, based on all the conditions and parameters, would be the best in slot for the Concerto specifically and its condensa stacks. Now, alternatively, you could go with Kushinagra as an option and then something like, the Octant Riot Disperser. I would agree that that combination works, but what you're getting for value is the value of this weapon getting more powerful, and obviously whatever the base stat is for this weapon being just what it is, which is fine because ultimately it could be really good, and apparently it is good. Could they be equal? Yes. And I think that's where we have to probably rest this case. Any one of these combinations is good. Whether they do the exact same amount of damage, I don't know. So then it would be how easy is it to get these weapons specifically? The Concerto, the Riot Disperser, the Chaperone. Now I'm going to suggest that people are more have access to the Riot Disperser more than they do the Concerto, because in order to get the Concerto, you would either have to buy 7 bundles, which is going to require you to pay money, or you're going to have to alternatively basically synthesize or get these on a random drop, right? So the Concerto would drop in this bundle, so you'd have to do a strike, but in order to get a higher chance of getting this, you need to have either gotten lucky and gotten that in your first ever exotic drop from a strike, or you'd have to get all 4 of these before you get that one, right? And then once you do get that one, then you can start prioritizing it, but that's extremely difficult to do. Whereas something like the disperser is generally a lot easier to get because we've had avenues to get the disperser in the actual game from the very beginning, because we have loot that drops specifically in Gauntlet for that specific weapon. And it's at a higher percentage than most other activities. At 15%, at least 3 times a week, and then 5% regularly, you can get this shotgun to drop. So in that regard, the access, the fact that it is very strong, and that it probably equals or surpasses something like the Eternal Retribution, does put it in a very good category. And I will say that my ranking for it initially was most likely wrong comparatively to the Eternal Retribution, that I put in S. So I still think Eternal Retribution is a lot easier to get, but I will admit the Concerto is not. And you need both of these in order for it to work. Alternatively, do you need exactly this and this to work? No, you could probably get the other Mythic as well here, and it would still be fine with Octant Riot Disperser, because really the only thing you're proccing with the Octant Riot Disperser is the extra damage on the primary weapon. So this is how I would rank these now on my tier list, ultimately. I gave the Riot Disperser, I believe it was B tier previously. I'm going to say that this is S or A. Now, if I do put it in A, it would be at the top of A, and if I put this in S, it would be at the bottom of S, in my personal opinion. Okay? This has a lot to do with it being on Gwen, which is a very powerful character in this game. Boss damage is important to some extent, but not really. It depends on what is happening inside the game. The Eclipse, obviously, I think this was very effective to do damage to try to one-phase it, although you had a lot of Estellas using her summon, so that's less relevant. I'm gonna put it in top of A, okay? And what I will do, because this is a different tier list with both Mythic and Exotics, I'm going to put the Eternal Retribution in, and this is controversial, I still think, but because of access, I want to rank this a little bit higher. I want to put this in the bottom of S. Okay? But the problem is, I know that it gets devalued because you need Concerto, which is the only way this is synergistic comparatively. So it doesn't really work if this would be an A, or this is an S, and then this would not be an S as well. So I don't want to do that either. So what I think I will do, because of it needing this specifically, I'm going to put these both in A, and I'm going to move this to bottom of S. Because this standalone is better than, is easier and is more effective and less conditional than these two together, which I do believe is a better value than this, but I'm going to take into consideration the actual conditions to proc the Concerto with the Eternal Retribution. And I would put this, I would probably put this in this order, because Concerto is very important to proc the Eternal Retribution and not the other way around. Now, we've talked about the other sidearm in the game, and I basically said that I don't think it really works. Or this is this is the other one. So I'm going to put this one into C tier. I just didn't see that it had really good synergy, whereas the Kusha Kangura does have synergy, but it's only for this specific weapon. I don't really want to put this in A, because I just don't think sidearms carry it. And in order to proc this, you would have to literally unload your entire disperser, which would be probably at a boss, and therefore that's when this would get maximum value. And outside of that, it's not going to get maximum value. So I'm going to put this at B. And I know it's controversial. Maybe it could be at bottom of A. I understand because of the synergy between the two. And I understand that this can still work without this specifically. But without this, this is less valuable, which is why it's at B. Okay? And then the last shotgun, we went through it. It just is not as strong. It does not synergize as well. And therefore, this would probably be, again, at C as well. Could it be at, bottom of B? Probably. But what's the point with limited loadouts? So that's where I would rank this specific weapon tier for Gwen specifically in my rankings. I just realized that I have to go here and do this real quick. Okay, let me put that down. So that's where I would go for Gwen. That's just one character. Okay, like I said, a lot of this is going to be a little bit easier when we deal with people with the same loadout, but regardless. All right, Ikora, a much more simpler thing because we only have the one mythic here. Okay, Present Fleet is the only option in this particular slot. There is no other synergy with a legendary or a rare weapon. There's no other exotic to compete with, so we really don't have a choice but to rank Present Fleet by itself with its own merits. It has some really good traits that can give it extra utility. This weapon deals increased damage based on how low the target's health is, up to 36%. And again, this is for final blow stuff. I don't know if I'd recommend that specifically. This weapon deals 28% damage when all fire teams are alive, and then using this weapon to break a match in elemental shield triggers a powerful elemental explosion, dealing 100% damage and grants plus 45% elemental damage for 3 seconds. What I would recommend is if you're going in with a fire team, you use Fraternity. If you're going in with things that you know what the shields are, you use Sympathetic Detonation. And if you're going in and you're going in by yourself, potentially you do something like this to finish people off, potentially with any kind of additional spread damage. I think it might proc off that, okay? Final blows grant plus 7% damage, stacks 5 times, with all stacks being cleared upon death. Again, this is the final blow ones. Each direct hit with this weapon grants the next round plus 15% blast damage and 10% blast radius. Stacks 3 times. It says it's not cleared upon death or anything. So, but you have to reload. It grants the next round, so it'd be a reload in between these things. Projectile blast always deals plus 75% blast damage when one target is hit, and 30% damage when 2 or more targets are hit. So this is definitely polyploidy is the right perk to have on this specific weapon, because this will increase turn boss damages and then also have a really good percentage against adds and clears. And with the spread damage, you're going to be able to proc this almost every time. So I would do polyploidy. If you're in a fire team, use Fraternity. If you're in something that you know the shields are going to be void, or in this case arc specifically, then you would use Sympathetic Detonation, and then otherwise you just use by yourself. Or if that's not the case, if you're not in a fire team, if you're by yourself, you'd use something like this probably, because Fraternity wouldn't even be active at that rate. Again, this front perk is not as good, but the polyploidy itself will make up for a lot of that as well. All right, so we can already just slot that in as the slot without having to do the comparisons. There is no synergy with this weapon with something like the Two-Tailed Fox. The Two-Tailed Fox I rated as a B tier on my last exotic tier list. It's not going to go up from that, because anything that requires this much work to get good, I'm not going to rank high, ever. I'm just not going to. It's never going to happen, okay? Let me be very clear about that. Let me make that standard extremely, extremely, extremely clear. The problem is, even with this being the B tier, this weapon here isn't much better, okay? And here's why, okay? Because right at base, you can have a Void and a Solar do damage. And in most content, this is going to be just fine at base level without any upgrades at all. It tracks, it's very user-friendly, and it has suppression, and it has damage over time. Good crowd control and good AoE effects, right? They're not that strong ultimately, but they do scale, and obviously you can increase it by leveling up, but that's not the base. That's not what we're going to be dealing with, okay? The Han 2 Tutum Alec, okay, has traits like this. Conjugation, this weapon deals 20% damage when it's equipped to a character of the same element. That's good, because Void is Void for Ikora. This weapon deals 28% damage when all fire teams are alive. Again, you know, you pick and choose here. If you're in a fire team, then this is the better one over this one. If you're not in it, then this one would be a better one by yourself, obviously because it matches your element. This weapon deals increased damage based on how low the target's health is, up to 36%. I would say that these two are better than this because I think overall you're going to get more value from these percentages than you would procking it at the lower 36%. But it's apparently the thumbs up. This is why not all thumbs up is the right choice. Ablation Shell. This weapon gains plus 200% damage on hit and 50% projectile speed at the cost of 50% of its blast radius. Blast radius is extremely important for spread, and usually that's where a lot of the extra damage comes from. So I would be very cautious to do this. However, if you're just going to hit, you know, a single target, then this is probably a good perk. Each direct hit from this weapon grants the next round plus 15% blast damage and 10% blast radius stacks 3 times. This is the same thing that we had on this one. Problem is you got to reload it. Reloading with these kind of weapons is very slow. Final blows grant the next magazine plus 60% damage after reloading. If no final blows were made with this previous, then reloading will grant up to 30%. Again, anytime you got to reload to proc something, even if it's shortened, these things, these rocket launchers are very long. Alternatively, you really can't get this reload time down until you, well, you can proc it once, which is fine, and I would recommend that specifically. But you have to wait all the way until the end to do another proc of the reload speed. And even at that, it feels slow, okay? I don't think there's really any debate here, and I'm not going to change any of my rankings based on Ikora or based on these weapons for my tier list this round. So, spoiler alert. The present fleet will get an S tier, and the two-tailed fox will still be a B tier. Okay, that's where I'm going to rank them. I will give the Riot Disperser a bit of an edge over over the present fleet. Okay, I will do that specifically. All right, moving on. Another character. Ning Fei. Ning Fei has a lot of options, okay? And to be honest, there probably is only, you know, one option for each of the different categories. I thought the Wolfpack was better than the Kulfi. I'm slowly learning that that just isn't the case. Most top tier players that play Ning Fei use the Kulfi. You might ask, why? Surrounded. This weapon deals 35% damage when 3 or more targets are in close proximity. This weapon deals 28% when all fire teams are alive. Again, in a fire team or solo, these things obviously proc independently of each other. This weapon deals increased damage based on how low the target's health is, up to 36%. Again, I would recommend these two over this. But the rate of fire and stuff like that might actually make this proc more and have more percentages than something like a slow rocket launcher or a sidearm. Rate of fire does actually potentially increase the value of something like Annihilation. Eager Aspirant. This weapon gains plus 40% damage when not firing, lasting up to 10 seconds. Upon firing, this weapon deals bonus damage while gradually depleting until it reaches 0. 40% base damage is quite a bit from the start, and then it'll go down based on rate of fire and stuff like that. Final blows made with this weapon grants it 2.5% up to 15, so 25%. The effect lasts until the current stage is cleared. That's pretty big. It's not even reset on death. You get the proc from initial leveling or whatever else. So whether it be the Expanse or the entire Calamity Op. So once this weapon is procced, you get the extra 25%. So Glutton is a very, very good perk, right? Every 4th round fire deals 280% damage. 4th rounds in this weapon would be specifically quite a bit off that as well. So you'd have to take your pick on what you want. I don't know what the averages are because I haven't done the testing. So this would proc what? 4, am I thinking it right? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. It would proc 7 times at 280% damage multiplier. Whereas whereas something like Glutton would proc 5%, but it would proc all of these. So whatever that would scale, whatever would be more beneficial, I guess, in the end. And then alternatively, the wolf pack has traits like, or perks like this. Weapon deals 20% when it's equipped to a character of the same element. Final blows, reload 30% round from reserves. This amount is doubled if this weapon has the reincarnation or hyperemia perks. And then annihilation, again, another annihilation for less than 35%. Obviously, conjugation most likely is the perk to have in this particular case because it is void versus... Okay, just kidding. This is where you get limited from... Okay, I was thinking of Jolder, right? So you're obviously not going to use this one. You're going to have to use something like annihilation, and this would be, again, the rate of fire would be 36%. So I think in this case, you'd benefit from something like annihilation. Final blows grant 7% damage, stacked 5 times with all stacks being cleared upon death, and this is on death, not on stage. This also has a glutton. Okay, so the difference would be between the wolf pack and the the wolf pack is not glutton because they both have glutton. They both have the glutton perk. So you can proc that. So it would be on this first one, which would be surrounded or fraternity. And I think based on that specifically, you are getting more value out of it. The difference is this. This is in void on Ning Fei. And this is in arc on Ning Fei, right? So, and this rate of fire is lower than this rate of fire. So my thought was very simple, and this is how I think I came to that conclusion. Now, I haven't looked at this specifically to go even further and say, okay, well, maybe there's something here that changes the overall value of the two weapons. I mean, maybe this is what brings it over. Maybe a little bit of an increased DPS because of the rate of fire is decreased, so therefore the precision bonus is increased. No, the precision bonus is the same. I think the reason why Kolfei is even an option, I really do, in Ning Fei specifically, is because he's broken and he's able to break shields regardless. And you would get the extra percentages from Surrounded and Fraternity. Whereas it's a little bit harder to proc the initial perks on him specifically with Sinful Karma or for Annihilation. I don't think the Annihilation is going to give you the amount of damage that something like the first two perks of the Kolfei. But this is because, and I will admit, I didn't take this in consideration. I just looked at raw damages. But because of this stupid-ass crossbow, can basically break shields of any element. You don't really need a void element weapon in this slot, so you would go with whatever's the most powerful in this case. And I think this is what they're doing. They just go all arc, and there's really no issues with him proccing shields. Whereas if you did that with Atal, it would be an issue. So I will say that this edges out the wolf pack then. Fine, I will say that. But here's what I will say, okay? When you're dealing with Jolder, I think this would edge out because of the perk with the void specifically being able to be procced over something like this where you need to be surrounded, okay, which is not a hard perk. It's not a hard perk to proc, but at the same time, or something like this when all fire teams are so obviously if you're in a fire team, then this could probably work with Jolder too, and then you get access to the arc element. If you're single, you do something like the wolf pack specifically. They're kind of interchangeable in many aspects, but I understand the point now as to why people would use that over that. I'm not even going to rate the exotics. Obviously, it wouldn't be the Huckleberry on Ning Fei because technically the Rust Runner is extremely good with Ning Fei. The problem is, ain't nobody going to use it with this crossbow being so good. So it's devalued automatically. And I rated this very high. I rated this A tier in my last tier list. It's not going to stay there because its utility in this game is being dwarfed by the crossbow. And I also rated the Saizo, and I didn't rate the Hond as well to the extent that I should have, because this crossbow is taking away all the power scaling in this game and making it unfair to even rate it. Listen, All right, I'm gonna give this. I'm gonna spoiler alert. I'm gonna spoiler everything here. Okay. Here's what I'm gonna do, and this will change some of my tier list from the previous one. I'm gonna give Wolfpack. I'm gonna say it's an A. I'm gonna go below Concerto and Eternal Retribution, only because I've come to realize that ultimately it may not actually do enough percentage damage and be synergistic to the extent that I thought. I'm going to give Coldfeet the S, and I'm going to actually put it above all of this because of who it's on, the Ning Fei specifically. I think with any additional help that Ning Fei gets to clear ads or to do more power in any capacity is just going to accelerate and make any of his weapons that much more powerful. Okay? If there was an SS tier, this crossbow would go up there. Okay? And it like it gets better the more you scale it. And it's not really all that great on base level. And I remember what I said about Two-Tailed Fox, right? The problem is with this gun, or this weapon is specifically, it's fine at base level. Um, and this is the only one that I would recommend currently to get the highest tier that you can possibly get. I would max this out as much as possible. Even if it is nerfed, you're going to get all that material back because they're gonna have to probably capitulate to the audience. So there's no real issues with this. This would definitely rank as an SS tier. If it was there, it's going to be at bottom of S. There will be nothing that surpasses this in the entire tier list. Period. All right. The Wrist Runner, I put it as an A. I'm going to put it at top of B. If this ever gets nerfed, the Wrist Runner is then going to be in conversations. Period. And if that's the case, then so isn't the crossbows we put in consideration. I don't know which one's the Sazo and which one's the other one. I think this is a Sazo. So I'm going to rate this just below. I'm going to rate this an A, even though it's not better than the Wrist Runner. But in this current situation, um, maybe the answer is not to put this in B. Maybe it is to put it in, because I had it at the top of A. Maybe it's just to put it in the bottom of A or just above the crossbow. Because if this were to get nerfed, then the Wrist Runner would be more powerful, and then directly behind that would be the Sazo in Solar. But do I actually think that this crossbow will ever get nerfed enough to make the Risk Runner actually viable? No. That's why I'm going to keep it at B. And I'll put this one right behind it. I think that's how bad we're getting. I don't think this crossbow competes. I don't think this crossbow competes at all based on its elemental matching of Ning Fei, and it does not benefit from being broken like the exotic crossbow is. That's where I would rank that specifically in this game as it pertains to this particular character. The Huckleberry will rank once we get to Jolder specifically. And let's just look at this. Let's just look at the perks for the arc again. Surrounded, Fraternity, Annihilation, Final Blows, fill this weapon in syncopation every fourth round, deals 200%. This is another one of those, deals 280%. And this is 36% magazine at a rate of fire. Where's the rate of fire? What's the high damage, high recoil? So it's a very slow paced. This one should be faster, deeper ammo reserve, slightly faster reload speed, stack in. Okay, so rapid fire compared to an aggressive frame, which would be more power differential, and that should be why would that be more DPS? Precision bonus. Yeah, I'm not sure how this translates, to be honest. I have not had enough testing with a Han 3 to know. I would say just out of the fact that this is solar, let's see the traits on this. Fire rushes weapon gradually gains up to 30% rate of fire. in damage for the lower half of the magazine. So that's pretty good as well. Rate of fire is really important in this game. Nearby allies' final blows grant this weapon plus 6 damage percentage and plus range. Grants plus 15% damage when the fire team is full and up to 20% additional damage if allies' shields haven't been broken. Again, you need a fire team in order to even proc this, so Fire Rush would be your best case in that case. This weapon gains plus 40% damage when not firing, lasting up to 10 seconds. Upon firing, this weapon damage bonus will gradually deplete until it reaches 0. It has the Glutton perk, so I think that gives it the edge. But then again, this is not a submachine gun, so take that with a grain of salt as far as, but it is fast. It can shoot pretty rapidly. And then it has Hyperemia. Final blows grant 16% damage bonus for stacks, 5 additionally reaching to 3 to 5 stacks. I mean, this is probably Eager Aspirin and something like Fire Rush, or if you're in a fire team, something like this. This is clearly the best. This is better option than Han 3. Yeah, I'm willing to go bottom of A for either of these two. I really am. I'm willing to do this. But I'm going to say, based on this meta right now, without the nerf to this crossbow, this is where it stands. Oh, let's finish off the Chaperone. Let's put it in C tier as well. That's a change from my other previous tier list. All right. Next character. Estella. Estella has the pulse rifles. Again, you're going to be dealing with the Sweet Ears in the ultimatum. The Sweet Ears has Voodoo Doll. Body shots deal precision damage to combatants below 30% health. Again, this is conditional to under 30% health. Nearby allies' final blows grant this weapon plus 6% damage and plus 6% range, or plus 6 range for 8 seconds, stacked 5 times. This requires actual fire team. This weapon deals increased damage based on how low the target's health is, up to 36%. I guess in this case, you'd probably want to go. I mean, it's probably this one regardless. Body shot damage gradually increases to that of precision hits based on the number of rounds used, reaching the same amount of damage as precision shots when the magazine is emptied. Final blows with this weapon grant 15% damage bonus for 6 seconds, stacks 6%, or 6 seconds. Yeah, 6 seconds to 6x. Final blows grants the next magazine 60% damage after reloading. If no final blows were made with the previous magazine, then reloading will grant up to 30% damage based on the number of hits landed. You could essentially do a final blow, reload, get the 6% extra damage with the previous magazine. Yeah, so there's ways to proc this if you're skilled with it. It might be, steady state might be the way to go for 6 seconds. This is very, like, these ones are very conditional, and it's, I don't know what would be the clear favorite here. 60% probably is the way to go. You get final blows, reload 6% of your next magazine. Your magazine in this case is, for Sweet Ears, is 44 compared to Ultimatum, which is 33. Its traits are conjugation, which is good, of the same element, which in this case it would be, but not in the case of Caber. Fraternity, and then another Annihilation. Steady state is the same one. It does have a Glutton. And it does have Clepsydia. Grants increased damage based on the ratio of hits to precision hits made with the current magazine, up to 75% resets when the magazine is empty. Now, here's the differential and why I would give this is what I made the decision on last time between Ultimatum and Sweet Ears. This is an arc. Ultimatum is in Solar. I would say specifically, even with the additional traits and perks for something like Ultimatum, which is better because it has Glutton And then even this would be a better perk, I think, condition than what Sweet Ears has because of the element, and it's not Ning Fei, and you really do, or you can benefit from the elemental advantage for someone like Estella being able to proc shields with this weapon. I would say this is a benefit specifically. I think if you're running someone like Caber, then obviously, because it's Arc, then maybe the Ultimatum is the best choice. Caber is not a meta unit. Estella is a meta unit, which means I would give the edge on Sweet Ears. I think I rank this S tier. If I had to look at this again, it's probably not S tier based on my reevaluation. I would probably go A tier below these that I have currently. And then I would even say that Ultimatum might even be it's B tier. It's gonna be just above Two-Tailed Fox, I think, in my opinion. All right, let's continue on to the machine guns. Now there are. Oh, right. The Furies 3 is another gun that we have to take in consideration. Furies 3 has, when firing repeatedly, this gun's firing rate can gradually increase to 540. Consecutive strikes will surround the target with critical points. Hit these points to deal higher damage. So this is like a little mini game that you can play with the Furies 3 specifically. The question is, do you run an exotic pulse rifle or do you run an exotic machine gun? This is the issue with some of these characters. And obviously with Ning Fei, it's a clear choice to run crossbow. With Gwen, it is not as clear. And I don't think it's as clear with Estella because the extra rate of fire can proc her corruption quicker, but that's dependent on if you have her T6 or not. If you're looking to proc corruption, then something like Furies 3 is maybe a better choice, but alternatively, the rate of fire of Heir Apparent, the amount of magazines capacity it has, and usually how much you actually have to proc, you can also proc corruption with this. And I would say that although if you were to ramp up Furies 3, it might be equivalent to the Heir Apparent, so therefore you could make that justification. What's your alternative in this slot? Well, you can't do the Gallows if you have the Furies 3. You'd have to do the Scorched Earth or the BVD4 Akatukatak, whatever it's called, okay? So the traits for the Scorched Earth are this. Voodoo Doll. Body shots deal precision damage to combatants below 30% health. Again, it's conditional 30% health. This is for fire teams. And then we've already seen this one as well. A lot of the same perks. Eager Aspirant, this wave against when not firing. Okay, so this is a base damage. But it scales down based on rate of fire and how long you go through it. Final Blows. Again, this is conditional to procking for Final Blows. Specifically, not something you're going to necessarily use or deterministic for procking corruption specifically. You don't really need to if you're going to use Furies 3 anyway. So this would just be for damage. And so far, I'm not seeing anything that is very compelling. Grants increased damage based on the ratio hits to precision hits made with the current magazine up to 75% race sets when the magazine is emptied. Okay, so what we're dealing with is a magazine size of 85, a magazine size of 43, and a magazine size of 210, or magazine capacity size. Okay, a magazine's capacity is relevant. And then a magazine size of 56, right? And with Gallows, you can, but we're not going to really talk about Gallows just yet because we're dealing with the Furies 3 comparisons. Listen, again, it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that with the same comparisons to Gwen with the shotgun comparatively to the sidearm. I will say that synergy is way better than the Furies 3 because it's just trying to proc the corruptions, and the faster you hit something, the more corruption stacks you can get quicker. Obviously, if you have a T6, you don't have to do as much. And technically, the Sweet Ears can do that as well with a rate of fire of 450 compared to a rate of fire of 390, although you can get up to 500 and something. So I think those comparisons, and with a rate of fire being 390 for the Ultimatum as well, I think those comparisons are less important for a rate of fire of 540. You're only getting, 90 more rate of fire, which is not a little bit. It's quite a bit. But I do believe that this has the ability to go even faster than that, although I don't know the exact amount. Oh, 900 is the rate of fire for this, as compared to the rate of fire for this would be 450. I just don't think there's really any consideration here. It's the heir apparent is the top bill for this particular situation for the corruption stacks specifically. Again, I'm going to stick with the same uh, philosophy that I had. I think the Furies 3 is a quintessential B tier weapon, and I would even put it because it's only really doing. I don't think pulses are that great in this game. I don't think they outcompete a lot of the things. You can't really proc servitor shinkas with it. You can't do anything with brigands. You can't do anything with spread shinkas. Procking shields is conditional depending on the element. For Estella specifically, it's not going to do that. It's in solar. For Caber, he's not a meta unit. I'm going to put it even below. I'm going to put it below Two-Tail Fox. This might actually be a change from my last tier list. I think this is the right area for it, honestly. Okay? I really do. I don't think it provides that much value. And this one, I could be wrong. Could it be bottom of A or top of B? Maybe in the meta because of Estella, and maybe the 90 is I'm not considering that enough comparatively. But I think again, this is one of those things where the heir apparent is just so good, and it gives you survivability with the extra shield. Not that that is necessary to the extent, but it can do so much. It has so much versatility. Now there was a buff to the gallows, so now you're comparing the gallows between the heir apparent. Again, you're trying to proc the corruption for Estella specifically, which is the only character in the game that you want to use this for that's relevant. So you're going to use it for the stacking of corruption. I really just don't think there's really any debate here. This is a more magazine, higher rate of fire. Again, if you have a T6 Estella, that's going to proc even quicker than if you're not. I think it just is beneficial all around, and therefore it edges something like the gallows. So I would put the gallows probably not a bad gun by any stretch of the imagination, but it's definitely not as good as Furies in many of the applications that it's going to be used into the game right now. I'd put it behind the Furies in B tier. Does that change where I would rank these? I mean, these are interchangeable to some extent. The Wrist Runner and Sazzo is not interchangeable. I would say these three are not really interchangeable, and I would even be willing to put these two in A. So that's where we're at. But the rest of them are pretty much interchangeable, so the order doesn't really matter as much. I'm gonna keep the heir apparent at the top. I would probably go above the Riot Disperser. I think Estella's ability to do damage in bosses, her relevance in other content is really good, and needing the Riot Disperser is more conditional than needing the heir apparent, which is more universal. I'd put it above that, and I would actually put it above the Colfi as well. So this is where I'd rank the heir apparent in this tier list. The actual other machine guns, we're not really considering them because, like I said, I just don't think that is best in slot. I don't think the Scorched Earth is, and I don't think the BVT Kuka Tukak is. Well, let me just look. The fire gains up to 30% rate of fire and damage for the lower half of the magazine. What is the rate of fire of this again? The rate of fire for this guy is 360 compared to 900, which is comparable to the heir apparent, but not in the fact that it procs a shield, and it also has a larger magazine size, and it has more damage comparatively, especially if you keep on going up in its catalyst. So it's obviously the clear favorite if you're going to use the Furies 3, but Again, why would you use the Furies 3 if you're just trying to proc corruption for Estella? Now, when new characters come out or new things happen, then maybe this would be a really good combination with another exotic pulse rifle. Sure, that might be best in slot, but at that time we might have a better mythic, um, machine gun to begin with. So I'm going to put these two. I'm definitely ranking Scorched Earth higher, so I'm going to put it in B because I think it has applications for the 900 rate of fire specifically. I'm just looking for it right now. Hopefully I have it. I'm going to put this one in C. Again, the order here does not matter at all in C, like literally. In B, it does matter to some extent because there are some things that could be in A. So, and then this one would be. I would say this has. I think this would have more utility with either Furies with the Furies 3. If you have the Furies 3, you're definitely going to have this, so this would take priority over the Furies 3. And if another pulse comes into the game, then I think the Scorched Earth would obviously beat up the Furies 3 because this wouldn't even be the pulse rifle you'd be using. So whatever the pulse rifle would be higher than this. I think this is the right ranking for that specifically. Did I rank the ultimatum as well, or did I forget to do that? Oh, no, I did right there. Okay, so we're good. All right, we're all caught up, I think. If not, we'll make corrections when we need to. Okay, Atal. I was able to test the old prefect recently, and I didn't like it, personally. I think it being on solar with Atal specifically is really good. But I actually think, and I did not rank this the same way on my last tier list because I was told what the old prefect was able to do, and I obviously only used the base level of the old prefect, whereas I have a higher, level the Crimson. I think the Crimson feels so much better in every capacity to use than something like the old prefect, which I find to be very slow, and the amount of DPS or whatever the elements are, the traits are, this weapon fires scatter rounds. Successful hits will scorch the target and deal increased damage. I didn't find this to be as relevant as it should be in Destiny Rising. I think the 3-round burst here heals the wielder. I think I think this is a better utility than something like the old prefect. Now, I've gone on record and said that the Royal Contravene is an extremely good linear fusion rifle. And here's the problem with Atal. She's very limited to the arc elements, which is what would give the old prefect the edge. But I just don't think it does. And I actually don't think Del 7 competes with the Crimson. So, obviously, if you have the Royal Contravene, you need the Del 7 Simmet. It's one of those things. I do think the end of line is a very competent linear fusion rifle. The more I've used it, the more I've upgraded it, the more effective it's become. I don't think it outbeats the 3-round burst of the Royal Contravene by any means, and I think this weapon, this ammo efficiency is way better than something like the end of the line ultimately. But I will admit, this is better than I gave it credit for. So I do think this combination of Crimson in the end of the line, although it's Atal and it's all arc, and that's not very good. So, it's never going to be higher than A, in my opinion. And I ranked Crimson at C last time. I'm definitely going to boost it up. The end of the line, I think I gave an S. I might have given it a B. I don't remember, but I'm more inclined to give it an A now because I think I'm going to devalue Royal Contravene only because of his slot. But with the addition of the new character, this may actually get boosted back up to S. But I think we're going to devalue this a little bit as well. Let me just look at the traits here for 1 second. Fire in line. This weapon deals 30% precision damage when near 2 or more allies. Again, this is Fire Team. So you definitely want to use this one, and you'd want to always be close together to proc the extra 2%. This is more reliable, so maybe that's the better option depending on how you are communicating with your team. Trinkle Leader Grants 50 when the fire team is full and up to 20% additional damage if allies haven't broken the shield. So this is obviously the right one to use. These are all very fire team specific, so that is conditional to that. Final blows grant plus 7% damage, stacks 5 times with all stacks being cleared upon death. Precision blows grant 25% damage bonus and 10% accuracy for. And then precision hits grant the next round fired within 5 seconds, 12 precision damage, stacks 5 times the last round in the magazine grant. Yeah, this is my issue with this gun. It feels really good, but its perks are not very good. And you need to be in a fire team in order to even proc the additional percentages here, which would then give something like the Rogue for you to contravene the clear edge. We might get a new linear fusion rifle with the new character being introduced on the 9th. So again, this may change it. Here's what I will say definitively. Because of the situation with Atal, I think this is probably still top of A. And alternatively, I cannot possibly rank end of line above Royal Contravene, so I'm going to have to put it probably just below the Sweet Ears. Because I just don't think with its current perk system, you know, it has the relevancy of Sweet Ears or the Wolf Pack or the the Retribution. I guess it could be this. I guess it could be this. But I'm telling you, the amount of damage this does in its tree burst round option is good on its own. You don't need a fire team to proc it. I still think it's top of A. I really do. It might be bottom of S. I actually think this is probably where it's supposed to be, is bottom of S still. Whether or not the new bow, the exotic bow, will outperform that, I don't know. And like I said, we might get a new exotic linear fusion rifle too that will compete with this in a different element. If that's the case, then that might be best in slot, because I think linear fusion rifles are very powerful as it is. And that's why this tree burst round in the Royal Contravene is super powerful as well. I'm going to give Crimson a little bit of a glow up. I had it at C. I'm going to put it higher now. But because it's on Atal, you really can't go any higher than B. So I'm going to give it one extra edge and put it just below. I'm going to put it. I think it has a lot of potential in the future. I'm going to put it just above the ultimatum. And then I'm going to put the alternative, which is the old prefect, just below it. I am not sure if it's just me or if it needs to be upgraded more. I don't think this is A. I had it in A before. I think I made a mistake, so I'm going to put it just below Crimson. I think Crimson edges it out in my other testing, so that's where I stand with that. Now this is leaving out the hand cannon that is in this slot. The hand cannon for this Dell is Voodoo Doll. Body shots deal precision damage to combatants is pretty good. Fraternity is fire team. Annihilation is below 36% health. You have Black Body, final blows. Rounds ricochet to the nearest combatant, dealing 6% of the original shot's damage. It's pretty good, right? It's pretty good. Final blows grant the next magazine 60% after reload, and if no final blows were made in a previous round, will grant 30% based on number of hits landed. And this has a magazine of 11. It's not very fast. I do believe you can. I think it is full auto. A well-rounded grip, reliable and sturdy. I think you can just pull the trigger and it just continues to fire. So that does give it a little bit of an edge. After looking at the perks and stuff, it might even outperform End of Line. I don't think it outperforms the Crimson. I will say, if you're not in the fire team, maybe the Dell and the Royal Contravene is the way to go if you're just running Atal in like Expanse or some other single player content. Admittedly, this might. We need a better hand cannon. Ultimately, and hand cannons don't feel that good in the game. I still feel that way because Crimson should be better than it is. The old prefect should be better than it is. I think the fact that it's in Mythic, its perks present a pretty good option because the other linear fusion rifle I might even be more considerate. I might be leaning towards it. But I like the Crimson. I really do. And the problem is it's with Atal, which is the issue. It might make me derank the end of line as well. I might come down with the end of line. I might do this instead. I'm going to put this above Crimson and the old prefect. I'm going to bring this back in line. You know what? This is the better option, I do believe. I think this is the right option here. Once we get other characters that can use the linear fusion rifle, once we get other characters that can use the hand cannon, I think that changes this. I think it skyrockets the Royal Contravene, in my opinion. And it might even skyrocket the Crimson or the old prefect as well. I say this is a very difficult one. I'm not sure. The reason why all these are B is because of Atal. I just don't think she has viability in the game. Okay, moving on.
I promise.
All right, so now we're dealing with auto rifles and swords. There's only one mythic auto rifle and it's competing with an exotic sweet business. Everything I know, and I have not used a sweet business at all in this game. It's the one exotic that I have not even tried at all, and that still remains the same. You have to get this all the way up, from what I understand, in order for it to be viable. This is definitely not the best auto rifle we've had in this game. There was a better auto rifle in beta, but we don't have access to it. So this is the best one we have so far. Your weapon gradually gains 30% rate of fire and damage for lower half magazine. This weapon deals 20% when all fire teams are alive, and then grants when the fire team is full. Again, a fire team, or in this case, when the magazine is half expended. Final blows and shots have 30% consume 2 rounds and deal 2x damage, which is huge. Final blows grant the next magazine. Again, so you pick and choose which one you want here. Not necessarily the thumbs up is the best one. Time marches on could be also really, really good. Magazine size is at a healthy 37 comparatively to something like the Sweet Business, which is a lot higher, but it does not spin up quickly enough. Larger magazine, increase accuracy when firing from the hip, picking up heavy ammo immediately. Reload this weapon. Sustain, fire boost, range, and rate of fire. It's just a very slow ramp up, unfortunately, comparatively to this, which has a 700 rate of fire. That's the differential. Ultimately, there's really no auto rifles. I'm still gonna give Sweet Business. I think it is still D. I think it is still D. I think it's just a bad weapon. It might be bottom of C. Maybe there's nothing that's actually D in the game, if I'm being honest with you. I don't think this auto rifle is much better. And like I said, we've had a better auto rifle in beta. So I'm going to put this probably somewhere like that is what I'm thinking. I think it has more utility than the Pulse, or specifically this Pulse. We could put it here, but it being on Wolf and it being on Finala and not having any new characters, I know people are pretty high on Wolf, but I've lessened it. I think the grenade launcher kills Wolf entire kit. The sword's got a buff recently. and there's a lot of options in Mythic for swords. I think the most comparably to any other weapon type. I just don't find these to be at all valuable. The Patriot Sky Sword we got for free if you were part of the event, and I'm not even sure if it continues for people who are just joining now. Again, it has a flame projectile that can do a lot of things specifically, but I just don't think that this is going to crack or be as impactful as other things in this slot, whether it be the crossbow or the machine gun. Therefore, it can't be A and it can't be S. It's got to be in B ultimately. And I think all these other weapons are behind it to some extent. I have no idea which one's better than the other. And I'm not even going to entertain the option. So what I will do in this case, unfortunately for everyone, is just say B, B, and I'll just say behind the exotic, in my opinion. I just don't think swords are because you have to get up close. I think they have a very limited use case. They do not feel strong. I mean, I don't know if they ever can feel strong because of what they are and what they potentially unlock in this game, which is not good. So they might have to just stay at that level, and it be at B is the real answer here, in my opinion. Obviously, in my opinion. That's where I rank. With the wolf, we've already done the auto. We'll just do the grenade launcher. I'm not giving this any love. I don't care the fact you have to upgrade this all the way up, and it will never get to the Mahar Murray levels of damage. It'll never be that versatile. And I don't believe in it. I still don't believe in it. I want to give the grenade launchers a D, and I think I'm going to give the grenade launchers a D, which then makes me realize that I didn't actually even rank the rocket launcher, which I'll also give a D. I think these pretty much stay the same from the last tier list I did. Moving on from there, let's go now back up to Tan. Tan has the Polaris Lance, and this was one of the most controversial listings that I did previously. And I also ranked the total lockdown as higher because of the rate of fire. And it gives Tan a lot of options in the expanse, specifically with rate of fire Shinkas. Let's look at the perks or the traits for this weapon. Bullseye rebate. Precision is of a small chance to automatically reload 10% of the magazine, and precision final blows have 40% to automatically reload 40% of the magazine. This is again with fire team. The weapon deals increased damage based on the low target's health up to. The rate of fire does help proc this a little bit better than other guns. Like again, we're talking about the submachine gun rate of fire. It'll make this percentages a lot easier to hit at a certain level because of how much just ammo or damage you're going to do in a second. Shots detonate on impact, converting 50% on hit damage into 60% black damage patterns with a 4% meter, which is a similar effect to the Polaris Lance. So in that case, it's pretty good. Precision final blows grant plus 25%, precision bonus and 10% accuracy for 8 seconds, stacks 3 times. Allocation vector, landing consecutive precision hits, automatically rolls magazine. Each shot consumes 2 rounds and deals 2 instances of damage at 75% of the original shot's damage until the magazine is empty. This is why I gave this more of an edge over Polaris Lance, because it did a lot of the same things, but in testing, it doesn't actually do the damage. Now, I've been hearing a lot of people talking about the Izanagi's and it being really powerful. And I actually do think it is powerful. And this is like, Tan and Umiko are like the ultimate example of switch and swap, depending on the actual situation specifically. Tan obviously benefits, Yumiko obviously benefits from the solar aspect of these weapons archetypes specifically. Obviously, Tan does not benefit from the solar aspects, and Borealis would be a great option for versatility. I've been also hearing that I've ranked the Magochi, you know, in the wrong slot comparatively to the 40,000 side rail. So we got fire in line. This weapon deals 30% precision damage when near two or more allies. So again, it has to be in a. This is fire team, and then when the fire team is full. So all fire team for this perk. Fire final blows grant 7% stacks when all being cleared, and then shiver is precision final blows grant 25% damage bonus and 10% accuracy for 8 stacks, and then precision hits grants the next round fire within 5 seconds, 12% precision damage stacks 5 times. Last round in the magazine gains up to 20% damage based on number of stacks held, as compared to the Magachi, which has the traits or perks of shooting while stationary grants a 20% and 20% precision damage. Rapidly landing precision hits within one will return 1 round to the magazine. And this weapon is based on how low the target's health is. Final blows grant precision, and then Parayama landing 2 consecutive precision shots. Okay, so a lot of the similarities here with these perks specifically. I will say that I probably. Oh no, Sierra Mark is different. Grant the next round within 5 seconds, 12% precision damage. I don't know what the What's the distinction here? What's the actual difference? Let's see. Landing 2 consecutive precision hits. Grant the next 2 precision hits made in the next 5 seconds, 150 precision and 2000 respectively. This has a magazine of 4, and this has a magazine of 6. This is why I gave the side rail an edge, but I will admit having the fire team, you know, needed here probably decreases this to the extent that not needing that here is maybe advantages. And this is kind of like dealing with like the Kulfi Wolfpack situation. Last time I put 40,000 side rail in A, and I gave Maguchi like a B or a C. Here's what I'll do to try to make up for that. I'm going to put this in A, and then I'm going to put the side rail just below in B. I mean, I'm going to put these both in B. I will say they're interchangeable. Without the Polaris Lance, obviously you're going to be using... I would say the Izinagi's is A. I would get it above Sweet Ears. I'd probably give it above Wolfpack, you know, now that I've reevaluated this in general. I would give Polaris Lance an A, and I would also put it just below Izanagi's as far as damage, admittedly, but I still think it's high on the list. Its primary might edge it out to be higher. And the fact that these snipers are really good either way obviously gives it the edge, I think, as well. Comparatively, if you used the Izanagi's, you're going to have to use something like the Total Lockdown, which is good for rate of fire, but not necessarily good in damage. But then again, if you proc all the things with payloads and stuff like that, it might outperform the snipers, but I doubt it. It definitely outperforms End of Line, so I'm going to put that right there in the middle of B as well. The Borealis, I don't even think it's in contention, but if it is, it's in B. I'm going to put this... I think it's just... I think this is just pure utility. I'm going to put this at the bottom of B. I think that's where it is, admittedly. Did we not rank this? Is this the Pulse? Oh, it's the other Scout. Again, I'm not even going to sit here and I'm going to look at it real quick just to make sure, because I want this to be the most comprehensive one that I do. I'm just not very high on it, ultimately. So let's look at that. Fraternity is fire team. Precision is a small chance to automatically reload, 10%. Landing 3 consecutive hits grants 30% rate of fire until the next reload and shortens the next reload time. That's pretty good. Final blows grant 7% damage stacks. It's pretty good. Rounds, ricochets, original damage, and every 4th round deals. This is another one of those 4th round dealers. What's the magazine size for... can I get back here? Can I go back there, please? What's the magazine size for this? 18 comparatively to that, which is 20. Rate of fire is 260 compared to 182. So even if you get the rate of fire, it's not going to increase it past 260, and this would be even better than 260. Admittedly, this is slower, but you're doing more damage. You're able to proc other things with Polaris Lance. I still think this gets the edge, and that makes Stealth 3 Lassie a C tier weapon. I would even put it. I might put it in the bottom of C. It just seems like that's where that's the wrong weapon. I put it at the bottom of C. Okay, we have 3 more weapons to go. With we'll do Jolder real quick. Jolder here. Obviously, it's a decision between the Wolfpack and the Kulfi. Or no, wait, sorry. No, it's whether we're gonna use the Huckleberry or the Wolfpack and the Kulfi. What we've determined is that in order to proc this weapon specifically, it was harder because we didn't have elemental parity. Now that we have elemental parity, I still think, based on my preliminary data previously, that Wolfpack will outperform the Kulfi in this particular area. However, if you have the Huckleberry, I do believe that it most likely is best in slot, only because I don't think that this sword is going to outperform these swords to the extent that it's important to keep the exotic slot the way it is. I do think that if you run these mythics, you're totally fine as well, and therefore you might as well have the exotic because it does complement. It just does a good job. The sword is a very good thing, but it's not that much better in my opinion. Whereas the other option for this particular situation is the crossbow versus the submachine gun, which we know that the crossbow is really powerful, so therefore you'd have a mythic slot in this submachine gun. So I'm going to give the Wrist Runner a solid, respectful top of B. It might even be bottom of A. You know what? Let's give it bottom of A. I think this is a fine build for Joder specifically. Other, characters, other sets in different situations might change this a little bit, but I think this is a really good option here. The Jodin, I ranked in A last time, and then alternatively, this would be another fusion rifle. You're competing in this slot with the shotgun. We talked about the Eternal Retribution already one time when we were ranking Gwen. How does it synergize with the Eternal Retribution, or how does it synergize with the Riot Dispenser or the Chaperone? I don't think the Chaperone's in contention. The Royal Dispenser, I think, might be the best option, which would then obviously give you the only option for this would be the IST Paranthea. It's in the arc element, so that's not ideal. I do think that the Eternal Retribution specifically in this slot is fine. I just don't know. Jodin, I've tried to use it, and maybe it gets super good at a high end, but initially it's slow. Doesn't feel like it's hitting hard enough. I did rank it high because I hadn't done enough testing, and now that I have, I'm going to rank it lower. Elemental issues aside, like the fact that it's on Jean Wei and it's solar is good, whereas opposed to the other fusion rifle being an arc is bad. Let's just check the modifiers here and see. Surrounded is more solidarity, nearby allies grant. Okay, so again, deals increased spend on how low. Okay, so that's low health. Black body, final blows grant 7% damage stacks with all stacks being glutton again. So glutton, it is possible and ensured yields. Yeah, the glutton proc is maybe gonna push us over. Rate of fire is, or charge time 400 compared to 550. Obviously, how much can you reduce this depending on how much you level it? Apparently not a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I think Jodin gets a huge knockdown. I think this might actually boost this up just a little bit, even though there needs to be a better option in Mythic specifically. I think either way you're dealing with this, I don't think the Riot Dispenser or the Eternal Retribution changes in any of the tier list. So I would rank the Jodin below two-tail fox. If you level it up, it might get above that, but then again, if you level two-tail fox, it gets above that as well. And then this one might actually be higher than these two. But because it's on a meta character, it's on a B character again, we're not going to rank it too high. So I'll give it the edge just because you might use this in the right disperser, which I did give it S tier. So that combination is good, even though you don't get the extra value that you would get from the other combo. Specifically with you being able to get extra damage on your primary. Okay, that's my current ranking for all of the weapons in Destiny 2 before the update 1.2. Mythic, exotics. I know this is controversial, and I know that not everything I said here is absolutely accurate, but I promise you I provided as much context and experience that I could provide. You fill in your own gaps, and I'm sure you can find the right list for you. Thanks for watching. See you on my next tier list in maybe a month, 2 months, maybe tomorrow. Who knows? Bye for now.